Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so over exploitation. One of my favorite stories.
David, could you just repeat hippo? Just repeat for the
Yes. So
recording.
hippo, exactly. Hippo, habitat loss, invasive species, pollution, population growth, over exploitation of resources, and also the harvesting of plants and animals. These are all the factors that are threats to biodiversity, harming biodiversity, driving our mass extinction crisis on Earth. I'd like to give a shout out to what I think of as our newest flagship species. The monarch butterfly has stood for biodiversity since 2015 in our town. The box turtle, I'd like to share you the story of the box turtle briefly. So we have, I think we have one box turtle in town. This is a male, and it's at least 50 years old. You can count based upon the number of rings in each scute on the plastron, on the shell. It gets fuzzy after about 50 years. This is a lonely male, and it's likely that these guys live to be 140 years old. This lonely male has possibly been walking through the sand pits for 50 years without a mate or company. There's a call for a fundraiser to help this bachelor find a mate. I'd like to actually raise a fundraiser for this turtle. And I'm in communication with the Department of Environmental Conservation to actually release a few more of them into the sand pits to help this creature. I think it would be, yes.
David, somebody I know found a baby. They found a turtle, a terrapin.
Yes, indeed. Those are found. And I'll speak of them if we have time. Okay, so now I'm going to go very rapidly through just what I call a story through pictures. So these are all different uses of biodiversity in town. I'd like to point out the Guggenheim Preserve, which is now our hub for environmental education for students, as well as a meadow restoration going on there that should be applied to other places in the peninsula. I'd like to point out that one of the most outstanding formations actually is these pinnacles of till. Let's see here. In the sand pits, they're 60 feet high and you can overlook Hempstead Harbor. And then these other items go without saying. So why habitat matters in Port Washington? I encourage people to explore, to go out, to visit new places, to document what we have, to catalog it. Just like at 140 West Shore Road, where we've got 100 species of plants, a fox, possibly a diamondback terrapin that you mentioned, Hilda, might lay their eggs there. And the quote by Shakespeare is so, really telling and worth sharing, is to give to airy nothings a local habitation and a name. That's the way I look. That's why I go out and study botany and get so excited about every different species. I love to share them and document them and hopefully use that information for conservation. Share with the would-be developers what's there as opposed to being uneducated. Okay, this shows the geology of the sand pits. Okay, this is from the 1950s, 1,000 acres of exposed sand, which is now regenerated into forest. Okay, this is the general geographic layout of the Hempstead Harbor Nature Sanctuary. Here's
That's a quick question. How long did it take to regenerate?
So
when did you say it was left alone? I mean, just for other places, we might want to try to regenerate.
Yes, absolutely. So this sand alley area here was once a pine barrens. It was just like the Long Island Pine Barrens. It was 1,000 acres of sandy habitat. In the in the 1880s, they started excavation because the sand was the perfect consistency for concrete. So they shipped the sand to Manhattan, and that sand was then used to develop all the concrete in Manhattan. They actually excavated 100 feet deep into the land, over 1,000 acres, to ship that over. In the 1980s, they stopped operation. It was actually Port Washington's largest industry in the early 1900s. And then different areas actually were excavated at different times. So you get a mosaic, a complex of older habitats, younger habitats, based upon when the mining ceased in the different particular places. So some of these the forests and habitats range from 80 years old to 40 years old. And they have now become Port Washington's most important place for biodiversity, supporting over 400 species and over 20 biological communities. I won't go through this map, unfortunately, except I'll point out the town landfill. Once it's decommissioned as a Superfund site, they're planning to rewild it, 20 acres of meadow. It'll be our most important meadow habitat. The Hempstead Harbor Nature Sanctuary.
David,
Yes.
sorry, it's Claire, just chime in. Can you tell me who is the they when you say they're planning? I mean, that's the operative word. Like, I'm just wondering if the current government, and we now have a new supervisor, I mean, I think we need to sort of revisit this town landfill and the plans for it. I don't know if you have sort of the latest, or you've been in touch, or.
Yes.
Yeah.
Backstory there.
Okay.
When I was doing my scoping of places in town that could be established for biodiversity, for key biodiversity areas, the town landfill came close to the top because it's got 20 acres that are vacant, or rather that are invasives.
Mhm.
And if restored, it could become our most valuable meadow. I spoke with the person, I forgot his name right now, but who oversees the landfill, and he's very excited. Right now it's a Superfund site, but that will stop in 8 years. Once it stops, he's got this grand plan to rewild it. This is a lesson that can be learned from many of our places, including our golf courses. Once they're decommissioned, actually, we really need to act now to advocate for these golf courses to incorporate biodiversity into their plans so that when they're decommissioned, instead of selling them for $100 million of property value, we ensure that they become protected biodiversity areas.
A quick question. When you say decommissioned, do you mean just when people stop playing golf there?
That's right, exactly. Golf is mostly played by elderly populations, and so once, some of the golf courses will not be economical in the future, and those will either be.
Actually, in the Ivy League, the upper middle class is continuing throughout generation. So I don't think it's a dying sport at all, actually.
Oh, wow, okay.
No,
Good to know.
I do think that it's a cultural phenomena that continues.
Yeah, but at some point, and because these like the Village Club and whatever, these clubs find that keeping them afloat when there's not that many members is untenable, that they're going to start talking about development and all that, and that's what David's saying. We got to get in there before.
Yes, exactly.
I think a golf course plan would be amazing. I mean, I think
We
that's
we have
something
to ban golf and
Yeah,
grass
ban golf
as soon
and-
as possible.
Now, I'd like to point out what we can do right now is advocate for these golf courses to incorporate biodiversity immediately. Harbor
Right.
Links Golf Course is an Audubon golf course, which means that they have met certain key measures, priorities to help bird life, including ponds, vegetation, they've done about the least amount possible to be certified as an Audubon golf course.
Mhm.
We need to advocate for all of our golf courses to be Audubon golf courses, so
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
half of our open
And I think that's a
space.
great step. At least it's a start as they're.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And it'll snowball. People will also,
Mhm.
it also help people to recognize the critical value of birds and biodiversity, and it'll make half of our open spaces valuable. Instead of just being lawn, it'll support biodiversity.
Can you send us just more information about that process of becoming
An
Audubon golf course? I mean, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
Something if you wanted to work on that and we could support, that'd be amazing.
Oh, yes. In fact, I'll bring
Not-
Peggy Maslow on board.
I'm not
who is-
sure.
Hilda, one
I'm
second.
I still would like to know where, I'm not at all convinced that golf is a dying sport.
Okay,
It's
that's a
not
great
that it's-
point.
But
Hilda.
even to make it
No, it's not that it's a dying sport, but the economics of it is troubling to the management of these of these golf courses. You know, at some point you can't maintain all that land when you've got a very low membership. So it's
and we
Yeah,
can start
Where-
making them
where
Audubon
is
golf
the
courses.
data? I would like to see the data on less membership. So there is less, you're seeing a decline in membership to the golf courses?
Hilda, this is a
probably is, yeah.
This is a great point, and probably each golf course is different.
Right.
I might actually get funding to do this work.
Yeah, I
approaching
think
every
you
golf
should, I
course.
think you should study that because it seems to me very, it's a cultural phenomena and it's an upper middle class typically, but also, I mean, it's not exclusive in
Yes,
that
yes.
way. And so
Let's,
I'm not, as much as I would love for it to, you know, I definitely think we should focus on this, but
But-
you need to have
yes.
data on that.
absolutely, Hilda. Thank you for
But
saying
even
that.
just to make it
Let's continue
biodiverse
this.
would
You
be a
guys,
start.
please, let's continue this in the Q&A because we don't have too much
Yeah,
time.
I just have to make one statement that I'm strongly opposed to any support for large grassed areas like golf courses. We have 5 golf courses, 5 major golf courses on the peninsula that's used by a very small fraction of the population. And I think it's irresponsible to be supporting them in any way when we're fighting a climate disaster. I just have to make that statement. I'm sorry.
I'm with you, Paul.
Amen. It's true.
Find
By
a
the way,
different sport. They
I
don't have
want-
to play sports on grass.
Yes. I want to move on. But before I do, so I moved here in Port Washington when I was 5 years old from Manhattan. I live right here. I would walk up to this space right here, which is an easement, and across this easement here. This used to be 1,000 acres of undeveloped land, except for the landfill. You would oversee this expanse, all wild. And now this green area is really all that's left.
Mm.
140 acres is left of that 1,000 acres since 2010. Or no, I'm sorry, since 2000, basically.
What about the blue area, David? What about this relic
Yeah,
basin?
I don't
What-
speak about it so much because it's basically a place where the sand miners decided to establish, to put all their wetlands. I'm not exactly sure how they did that. It has an interesting geology, but I traverse that area. It's all Phragmites common reed, so it does support bird life. So it's not that important as far as I've identified, but it's a big habitat area of wetland and uplands. And so to just cover this, so the Hempstead Harbor Shoreline Corridor Trail is a marsh habitat that abuts the Hempstead Harbor. There's a restoration project going on right here. And also the town just started restoring this little area right here into a salt marsh as well as part of the future Hempstead Harbor Beach Park. And I'll move on. In 2016, 2017, 2018, 19, I wrote to Judy Bosworth in the town to establish a Hempstead Harbor Meadow. One of our fewest last lawns town owned is this orange area right here. As it stands, you can see the picture. But Judy said that, yes, they're going to go ahead with this and establish a 4-acre meadow habitat. I do not know if that is still planned, but it's something that I'm going to follow up with Marion Del Monte to make sure that that plan is still going. It's actually one of the most valuable rewilded areas that we could possibly have in Port Washington based upon what town-owned open space we have. And it could be comparable to the Guggenheim Preserve monarch habitat.
Later we'll talk more about this, but we will be meeting with the Senate, and these plans are good to know, so we know what we're in the works, and we want to continue to be in the works. Just make sure she doesn't go back on any of this.
Absolutely. And I'll have Judy Bosworth coordinate with Marion, because Judy Bosworth, we work together on making this a protected area. So it would be good for them to coordinate. Yeah. Okay. Again, so moving on to the Hempstead Harbor Nature Sanctuary and the story through pictures. Here are 6 different types of biological of wetlands that you find back there. I love this. So I started this place for years now. I was a wildlife photographer. This image here is my favorite. It's a great egret and a snapping turtle facing off. And you have also, anytime you go back there, you see 4 or 6 great blue herons, tons of egrets, snowy egret, great egret, red-winged blackbirds, breeding birds. There's a heron rookery, 12 herons up there.
And David, can you go back just one minute? You can see the baby. Is that the baby? What is that?
Oh, so 2 different species. Great egret.
Different species.
Snowy egret. Yes.
Oh, it's a snowy egret next to a. Wow.
I love it.
Did you take that one?
I took all of these. Yes.
Beautiful.
I
Who
hood
is the blackbird in the back?
Our red-winged blackbird. It's on the Wild Long Island logo.
It looks so on the where you have the egret.
Yes.
There's a bird on the other side.
Oh, that's a black duck. So
that's a big black duck.
A mallard and a black duck. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a beautiful picture of 4 species living in harmony.
Oh yes, absolutely. And I'd love to bring you guys there.
I love the also it has the mirror. You have the mirror image.
Yes.
That's so nice.
And we've got a Napoleon complex going on as well.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so these are all breeding birds. The wood duck in particular is a New York State species of conservation concern, as well as the yellow-billed cuckoo. So they breed back there. I mean, that's one of the reasons it's important.
Why, can I ask you quickly, in terms of the chicks?
Hilda, in the interest of time, actually, and everybody, I'm going to ask that we not ask any more questions as I go through. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
We'll have a Q&A at the end for those people who want to stick around. And we'll save some time for the Q&A. We still have just a couple minutes left. Okay, wet meadows and marshes. Here's Tanya Klusner on the lower right-hand corner, helping me to take some of these photographs. The sandpits support 5 endangered species that we know of, and probably many more, including these 3 species of moss on the left-hand side. One of these species of moss, the Micrometrium, is known nowhere else in New York State. There are, as I mentioned, 20 different types of forests back there, some of them with some pollution going on, but most of them are native. And so this is our most important forest area in town as well for biodiversity. There are rich soils, poor soils, and they harbor different fungi based upon the soil type. The area supports forest interior birds that occur nowhere else in Port Washington. These birds require large forest habitats in order to make their livelihood. So that 140 acres is just large enough to support these birds. And these are breeding birds that are found back there. Not my photographs. As I mentioned, these little woodland pools support breeding salamander pools. Here's an example of what one looks like. Here's an example of the spotted salamander that might use these pools. More surveys need to be done. Here's an image of the ATV trails that are back there. Like spaghetti, you can see how fragmented the landscape is. And here's images of how the landscape has been torn up by these ATVs. For 3 years, I campaigned to stop ATVs and Jeeps from going back there. That law was enforced in 2017. ATVs and Jeeps are still harming Moriello Creek, which runs alongside the Long Island Railroad. I have started a campaign to stop that, to enforce the ban on that as well. Another lesson learned from the sand pits that can be applied elsewhere. Here's another example of their harms to habitats and wetlands. And these are breeding pools for amphibians as well. They could not go anywhere without talking about monarchs with that use milkweed alongside of the road. I'm starting a New York State campaign to establish monarch butterfly corridors along all roadsides. I'm in touch with the New York State Department of Transportation. They're pretty excited about that, but I need some help to do that because it's a really complex project. And I hope to help this species, which there's a 50% chance it'll go extinct by 2050, according to ecologists, ballpark figure. So this flagship species is I like to see it as Port Washington's umbrella species to save, flagship to save our biodiversity. Across the street are our salt marshes. And as sea levels rise, we need to support these salt marshes so that they can also rise to meet the pace of these rising sea levels. This is now our most endangered habitat. By 2100, we might lose all of them due to rising sea levels. Why do we care about salt marshes? They're mitigate floods and storm surges. So Hurricane Sandy and other events are reduced in magnitude and damage. They remediate pollution like nitrogen, fertilizers, septic systems. And they're also our fisheries for our nurseries for shellfish and fish. Here's a few photos of, and I took some, no, I didn't take any of these photographs, but river otter, osprey, diamondback terrapin, piping plover that inhabit our coastal habitats. Finally, we have some new species on the scene. Red fox are not new, coyote, white-tailed deer. All of these species, they actually use corridors to travel across Port Washington from the sand pits to, I'm sorry, from the Hempstead Harbor Woods to Sands Point Preserve. And these corridors are crucial. The corridors include West Shore Road alongside of the beach. And here's an image of this area, 140 West Shore Road, that is to be developed. This will fragment their corridor. These foxes, deer, coyote will have more trouble getting around the peninsula. And there will also be more traffic accidents because of, if this corridor is cut off, these animals are going to have to cross the street at this place if they want to move to a different place in Port Washington. These are images from Claire on the left-hand side, absolutely beautiful. I think it's the most stunning image of 140 West Shore Road. On the right-hand side, we have, on the upper right-hand corner, a fox den. I don't think they're breeding fox there, but they use it as a refuge, and fox footprints in the lower right-hand corner. A great way to advocate for the wildlife at this place is this fox den, as well as the 100 different species of plants that are found there. What actions can we take to support biodiversity? I know that we're, so just very briefly, I went through these during the presentation. Continue to explore, research, and document our flora, fauna, and habitats. Host a fundraiser for our box turtle bachelor. which we can use for different biodiversity efforts. Stop the use of all-terrain vehicles by the Moriella Creek, and also stop garbage dumping back there. Protect our wildlife corridor along Hempstead Harbor from development. Advocate for eco-healthy golf courses. Advocate for the establishment of meadow habitat on the landfill. Continue to manage invasive species on a site-by-site basis, and to watch out for kudzu and other emerging species. The principle is early detection, fast response. Remove them before they spread wildly. And then control foot and bicycle traffic through interior forests and open waters to protect our bird life and not to disturb them. Enforce laws against all-terrain vehicle traffic. Assist our salt marshes. The presentation I gave last time was all about this, or largely about this. Protecting our salt marshes, and Chris and I were speaking about that. He raised the question, why protect our salt marshes? As we mentioned, they're one of our most important habitats that will be gone later this century. And then most important is protect what existing intact habitat that we have from development. Once this development is developed, it's lost forever. Rewilding regenerates new habitat, but it doesn't measure at all up to habitats that are already intact. So that's the conclusion of my presentation. I'm sorry it took a little bit longer and we had a late start. I'm really thankful that you guys are still here and around and interested in listening. And I'd like to ask at this point, and we can run over as well, but I'd like to start with any of the most critical, urgent questions, and then moving on to other discussion points that you'd like to bring up. So I open the floor to you guys to make comments, questions, observations, ideas at this time.
Oh, Hilda, you have your little hand.
Yes, Hilda.
Yeah, my question would be, so if I was in the audience, I would ask myself, biodiversity is supposed to protect us against pathogens or emerging diseases, but when you go to the sand pits, you have more ticks than anywhere else.
Yes, yes, indeed. So with respect to that, the Lyme disease has two vectors. It requires two different organisms. The white-footed mouse, which actually is the original organism that harbors Lyme disease. And then deer contract Lyme disease from the white-footed mouse. So this is a great example of how biodiversity mitigates the spread of Lyme disease. The white-footed mouse does not, as far as I'm aware, either is very limited or does not occur in the sand pits. So yeah, so that vector is limited. And the white-footed mouse doesn't occur back there because actually the white-footed mouse is a specialist that occupies developments as opposed to wild areas. So great question.
That confirms with my understanding, David. I understand that the white mouse population is not very heavy in the deep forest or meadows. It lives in edge habitats like suburban developments on that border on planted areas, and so I think that that's something to educate people about, because ticks are a real danger.
Oh, yeah.
And Lyme disease is a real danger. And they're really the suburban development is what perpetuates it, because there are no predators in the suburbs for the white mice, or the predators in the woods.
Yes.
So we need to
need
promote predators And we need predators also for the deer. I heard there was a deer in Roslyn. And I have nothing opposed to deer, but we need to have the wolves and the other animals that will keep the deer population under control.
This is
Yes,
such
yes. And Paul, to speak to both of those points, absolutely. Also, we need an educational program. Last year or 2 years ago, yes, pre-COVID, a tick was found at Salem School on the lawn. They responded by blasting their entire field with pesticides.
Hmm.
That is an uneducated approach to managing ticks and harm.
Well, I have mixed feelings about that. I oppose pesticides, but anything killing grass is all right with me.
Yeah, no, but it remains a lawn, but just a toxic
Yeah, I
lawn.
like sheet mulching better.
Yeah, and then to speak there, yes, and then yeah, great points, Paul. The educational program, and also when it comes to introducing predators, I think the main predator actually for deer is humans. In 2004, prior to that, there were deer on the peninsula, but people killed them. So that's another question to ask, is whether we should maybe not kill them, but shoot them with darts to make them so they can't reproduce, at least a certain number of them, to keep the population down.
I have two
Agreed.
different thoughts. So is the main argument, I mean, there's a lot of different arguments against 140 West Shore Road, but is it that we could potentially prove that it's a corridor to some of these endangered species? Okay, so that's the argument. going
Absolutely,
forward.
absolutely.
Okay.
So actually,
Block-
yeah, there's a correction there, which is we haven't identified any endangered species back there, and but species that there are species we should protect. Endangered species are recognized by the federal government or New York State, and they're given protection from any form of what they call take, which includes development. And so, but we don't, the wildlife corridor would be for fox, deer, and coyote primarily. If we fragment that corridor, they will be crossing the street over right at that location, and that might increase accident incidents at that
Okay, so we
location.
haven't located endangered species yet we could point to.
But I do plan to go back with Claire and do another survey in the spring. We documented 70 species in winter. So there's probably 120 species back there, but I don't anticipate we'll find anything endangered. The thing that is there possibly is a diamondback terrapin area where they lay eggs. And that would be our greatest
Breeding ground, okay.
Yeah,
flagship
because
species for protecting the
actually,
area.
Alicia Clark, I'm saving the specimen because Alicia found that baby terrapin.
Yes, yes.
It's an actual evidence of terrapins breeding right there. She found it at where the development is supposed to take place. So
That's good.
Yes, yes.
I love
But
the,
it's not, okay, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry, just to jump
Yeah, go ahead.
topics. I love the idea of a fundraiser for the box turtle. When I was living in Queens as a child, I had a box turtle as a pet. I traded my cat to get the turtle. And some people felt that I didn't do well on the trade, but I really loved that turtle, and he was pretty big. So we should give him a name and raise money. This would be something that could be a high visibility activity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I was just going to say, maybe instead of sort of focusing on endangered species, it's just saying it's a wildlife corridor so that they are able to go up the beaches and get to the Sands Point Preserve and the Sands Point area and back and forth. And I mean, well, you don't have to mention, it could be any development, anything where you're putting up a fence We're talking about even at the Guggenheim Preserve that there's a fence between the golf course and the Guggenheim Preserve. If that came down and was trees, right, then animals can
Right.
go between. So it's this idea of being vigilant of wildlife corridors and not fragmenting them, any place really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think if it's a volunteer appropriate activity, it would also be a great thing to, mobilize people and mobilize, school age children to work on. And the photos of the animals, they're so photogenic, they're so great. We should, definitely use them. And I think that really, let's say, personalizes. It's funny. The first word that comes to mind was humanize, but I mean exactly the opposite. It just makes
I
people
like that one.
aware.
Animalize.
It's cute. It's kind of a cute mascot in a marketing sense. I mean,
Yes,
it's
Paul,
terrible, but
absolutely.
I think Jessica is asking a question. So,
Yes.
and I see it in the chat, so I don't know how long we're gonna go.
As long as everyone wants to stick around.
I think we have it. It was a great presentation because last time we didn't have the audio, so we weren't able to receive it. But you had so much in there, and I would like to accentuate, especially in terms of wetland protection. I would like the slides that you have, the research that you've done, the documentation. It needs to be highlighted. People need to get a feeling for understanding biology or ecosystem management, like whatever is involved in living here on land.
Mhm.
How can we, I think for me, I would like a more, I don't want to say sensational, but highlight the water ways in a way that's going to be relatable for the town. Highlight the waterways in terms of retention and discharge, because I don't think people understand. They think that water is just going to end up in the ocean, and they're not thinking water is going to land here and have to find a way to the ocean. And that's the problem with flash flooding. So that's like a practical, it's a very, in Queens and very soon in Port Washington, it's a life-threatening situation. People living in basement apartments. Water has a memory. It's going to go to the places it needs to go. So if it's going to come pouring down because we have more water, we have more moisture in the atmosphere from the warming climate. So we're going to have more flooding events. And the first situation is we're going to look at Manor Haven is going to deal with basement flooding. So we have to make sure nobody's living in the basement. So if we think
that's where we need to talk with Jessica and do some, I think, planning and organizing.
Yeah, as a local community,
that population and get them.
Yeah,
have the heat.
We have to make sure that nobody is living or sleeping in the basement as the water levels are rising.
Well, I don't think you can approach it exactly that way, but certainly you've got to, make people aware of the problem and protect them. David, just one quick comment.
Wait, did Jessica, do you want to say something? Because you have your hand up and I don't know.
No sound.
Yes.
Here she is.
Hildur, my thought is,
David, let Jessica speak.
oh, absolutely, yes. I'll answer. I'll respond to you afterwards. Go ahead, Jessica.
Hi guys. Sorry, I'm like working, but I don't know if you guys can see me, but it doesn't.
It's good to have you here, Jessica. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I really love this presentation, David. Everything, like I agree with Hilder, all the research and everything, how you put it, it's just so worth it to just, make this a video and just like, like share it everywhere.
Mhm.
And there is a bunch of stuff that we can start doing in on the chat. I said that related with the schools. I think you touched something like about the schools, like making every school, or not just Guggenheim a school, but like a program for the kids, so they can learn, and we can like teach them, or share all this information. So I have like a bunch of ideas that we can keep working on, and definitely I would love to help as much as I can.
Thank you.
Because
Yes.
so let me just tell you the ideas quickly, and then it's not just like to do it by tomorrow, but I think we can work on that. So what Margaret and Hilder said about the people living in the basement, that's something that I think we have to make a priority, like after the next couple of events that are coming. Because most of the, I can say like most of the Latino communities or low income people, they live in basements on Manor Haven. And basically every single house has a basement. So I'm pretty sure it's not like if we like approach them, and I would like love to help with that, like with the Hispanic community. I can talk and ask, but there is a bunch of people that live on the basement, and just to like
Yes.
set up a meeting or a conference. They don't have to come. We can just make it on a video and just share with the people like the consequences, what they can do, and in case of a emergency, or remember, Margaret, the name, like a
Yeah, I think
disaster.
we were gonna ask I actually have an email out to Aaron Molinoff to put a presentation together well, I haven't talked to him. I'm trying to get him to do a presentation about disaster preparedness, and that we could do that in Spanish. But we could do these in parallel, so people know what they need to do, but they also, what's happening as well. But that was one idea that we had, Jessica and I had.
Yeah.
And
to respond to this.
guys, you have so much information that I will say I don't know really. I'm just like learning with you guys, as I always tell you. But I think all the knowledge that you guys have, we cannot just leave it between us. And I really think we need to like work on like spreading that out, just don't
Absolutely.
keep the information. And I was thinking, like what I really want us to think, if it's possible, because really it doesn't cost like that much money. It doesn't cost anything. It's just time, the time that we want to invest. So we can make like something like this, David, the conference, a meeting, or something that we can make a video of, or even like record every conference, and I can just help friends to like help me out for free, or I will pay something to put the subtitles. And just like each of you have so much knowledge about many things that a lot of people would love to know, or just we don't know at all. But just like the technicality of everything that you guys do, I think it's worth like of sharing and making a video, and just you give me the video and I will find out a friend and to put subtitles. I'm pretty sure that's not
David,
complicated.
David, you're doing this at the library, right?
Actually, so I'm going to be meeting with Keith Klang. Actually, he was my college roommate, and he's the director of the library. So I'm meeting with him next week. That's a possibility. But also, I would like to get your impression about whether or not this would be a good presentation for Landmark.
It will. Maybe,
I think better
It's-
for the library.
Mhm.
yes,
Okay.
yes. And the library, I think it
And that's
will
might be a
good.
place, I mean, I love your idea of the videos, but it's also somewhere that we could potentially figure out how to invite the Latino community and figure out some sort of translation
Yes,
system or something.
Margaret, at the beginning, maybe we can just do it, I mean, like everything in English, right?
Yeah.
And just the people that speak English, they are gonna come. But
Mhm.
then if we make this into a video with subtitles in Spanish or any other language, that's super easy. Then we can
Yeah.
like just share this video everywhere, like really everywhere.
I'm up for that. Unfortunately, we only record.
I just want to take a moment. I just want to take a moment and notice that Jessica is joining us in a busy, in the middle of it looked like very urban and very busy. And thank you, Jessica, for having taking the time to join us, because we need you.
I want to say one more thing as a big thanks. I just want to recognize Jessica, because we had the first town meeting that I've seen that had Spanish English translation, and that was done by Jessica. And
I
she
feel like
helped get out
crying.
like the Latino community, and so that was a big first. And
It
the
was a
town
real-
and Wendy wants to continue with that, so thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you
It
for
was
Oh,
that.
that's
huge.
great.
It's huge. Jessica, you're already making a change to our town in terms of inclusivity and just bringing our community together. And I can't wait to work again with your daughter.
She would love to work with all of you guys. I wanna have the moment to say that all of you, even if you think, I heard something this morning, it's like, whatever you guys are doing that is with a lot of passion, you just like, it's your talent, right? But you just do it because it's so natural that you cannot really see like what a big gift you guys have, like here, and here. And because you do it, you might not think that it's not like relevant for other people, but I'm telling you that all the knowledge that you guys have is just my duty here is just to share that with, and just like share that with other people, like with everybody.
Well, you and your daughter are my inspiration.
Jessica, I want to ask you. So you mentioned flooding. What are the other major environmental needs of the community? And also, where does the community go when they want to have experiences or learning in nature?
I will say, because I don't think if it's because of our culture, but we don't, once we're here as an immigrants, we don't really get that time, like valuable time to go outside. So I think first time when I got into the museum, I thought that was amazing because I didn't even know. I was so afraid to get into the museum because I said, oh, I don't belong there. That's like too, like I might not even able to pay for that, right? But when you guys did those events with the music and everything, listen, I couldn't make it because of the weather, but I think those kind of things were a key to bring a lot of people from everywhere, especially in my community. Because I'm telling you, it's not the same to teach you something like I don't want to be disrespectful, but I love going to the library and learning there and everything. But for some other people, that's like too formal. So I think if those pictures that you show, like in the space or open space, I think we have to like even do it, like even start doing it in like places that are common. Like Claire the other day said that
In
Manor
where?
Haven Park,
Jessica, it's a little hard to hear you.
Manor Haven Park is like super popular for my Latino community. It's free, it's big, it's an open space.
I think that's a great idea.
Even if we, I mean, right now it's like a little bit too crazy to think about going there. But that could be something that we can start doing in the summer or when the weather start getting like
Oh, yeah,
more friendly with us. Just like
absolutely.
small activities. And I was telling Margaret the other day, we as a parent, we don't just leave our kids by themselves, right? If we can like attract kids' attention, the parents are gonna be there.
Oh,
Because
that's wonderful. That
w-
brings up two thoughts.
mhm,
So I would love to lead nature walks back there over at Manhasset, I'm sorry, over at Manor Haven Beach, as well as the new trail that goes across the community garden to Sheets Creek to the town dock. And the other thing that raises is, so this is a presentation that focused on the Hempstead Beach Park natural area. If with assistance, if anybody would be up for it, also I might ask tree huggers as well. I could develop presentations for different parts of the peninsula. I could develop a presentation for Manor Haven and Manhasset Isle, for example.
mhm.
It would be a very big endeavor, and I do have very limited use of my hands for typing. I've just worn them out over the years, but with support, that's another opportunity to create something like that, and also then to complement that with guided nature walks as well.
To do the nature walks, do you have to can you just do it, or do we need to get some sort of, I don't know, licensing or anything like that, or?
Yeah,
I'm just trying to figure out events as well, like what we can do and plan out there.
right. So Hilda and I have some experience here. Back in 2017, we led a nature walk at Christopher Morley Park. I think 25 people showed up, or 20 people showed up, and it was fine. I think the town law is you can't do what do you call it? Get more than 15 people together in a place for an event without some town permission, but it's not enforced.
Yeah.
So we would be fine getting as many people as we like. Maybe the Turtle fundraiser also could help to support those educational walks.
Also, I forgot to mention, I'm sorry. I know Paul said that we should start doing the fundraising for the tour. Everything with that, I also agree. Whatever we need.
What's that,
we
Jessica?
really-
It's a little hard to hear you.
Sorry. But Paul and you, he said that he agreed to start fundraising for the turtle, like to sign him a mail. I think that's an amazing idea. Like,
Oh, great. Yeah, I think so too. I want to put out a newspaper publication, and then also for to share that with you, and then brainstorm ways to work with this turtle. I'm going to be hearing back from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation on Monday to get permission, and also to get access to some turtle rehabilitators that they might be able to give us turtles to bring into the wild.
And I love, like, we need to get people out there to understand that they need nature.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter, we can't develop into every part. And for example, here where I live, it's really concerning the lack of public access to the beach. So when I first moved to Port Washington, I didn't understand because it didn't record with me that somebody owns the beach. So I was walking at Seacliff Beach and somebody said I have to leave because I don't have membership. And I asked the person and I said, I didn't have any friends at the time. I had just moved here. And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, you have to be a member of Seacliff, Yacht Club to be on the beach. And I didn't even understand what he's talking about. But at like the waterfront right now at Louise, we're looking at development, and if you know, the plans in place, if they get to have their way, and of course I'm speaking from, you know, being a resident, it's already congested, the traffic, so there are personal interests, but also public interests. People like coming to the waterfront. The Knickerbocker, that whole area is not accessible to public. If developers have their way, it's gonna, even more area is gonna be sealed off for public use. You're not gonna be able to use that area for being by the bay. And it's a human rights issue in terms of remembering where we belong, where we come from, sitting by the waterfront. I think it's something that I would like to make a strong point on both sides. By Louis, of course, personal interest. I admit I live right there, but at Bar Beach, public access to the waterfront, remembering our connection to earth and each other, and for everyone to have that accessibility. Once you make it private, it's gone forever.
Mhm.
And then I noticed also that a lot of it, the population of Manor Haven, they use Bar Beach very, very, very regularly, which is wonderful. They found one of our greatest assets. Actually, in 2013, I wrote a grant to write a publication to help different communities find different places where they could have experiences in nature. I forgot about that, but that's another resource to that we can mine as well. Anyhow.
David?
Yes.
It's Claire here. I mean, some other things, because I guess if you're going to show it at the library,
Oh yes.
it is that, you know, a lot of people aren't going to know, you know, what rewilding is, what carbon sequestration is. You know, you're saying it's a good thing, it's a benefit, but you're not explaining what it is in their terms. Like, oh, carbon is fossil fuel pollution, you know, oh, the marshes, you know, take in this carbon, you know, this pollution and whatever. I don't know exactly what it does with it, but makes it so it's not bad anymore, you know, whatever it is, but it sort of say it in more layman's terms,
Yeah.
you know, that people can really, I mean, the general public sort of understands the benefit. Same with you know, rewilding was the other words, or, you know, native species. Okay, well, what's that? You know, you sort of blew over that, but it's, you know, the reason native species are better is because, you know, Y or Z.
Absolutely. We should create a list of those. I'll create a list of those terms: invasive species, native species, rewilding.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. That's great.
That would be an amazing manual from us to the community to understand the difference. You know, like to understand that when you plant something, because when we changed the tree law, the biggest, even my neighbor in adjacent street, he came to me and he decided, because I talked him out of it, but he was like, I can plant whatever I want, and if I don't like it, I can cut it out. And I'm like, well, it's a tree. And he's like, well, if it's so many, like, he did not want me to tell him by legislation that a certain diameter means you can't cut it down. So he thought of trees as property. And this brings us back to rights of existence, that nature never had like a right to exist, her own right? So this guy, he's well-intentioned, he's very nice. He ended up not talking back, or he's a lawyer, so he could have really made a big impact on the modification to the tree law, but we talked for a long time, and he ended up realizing that trees are alive and have their own right to be. So once a tree is 6, and I was like, it's kind of insane to have to wait for a certain diameter for a living being to have a right to be alive.
It's so arbitrary. Yes.
It's so arbitrary. But for him, before we spoke, when he was outraged and we had this conversation, he was like, who are you to tell me that I can't cut down a tree in my front yard? And then I pointed out to him that he's treating a living being as if it's a furniture in his front yard.
Yes.
You know, like that's the mentality we need to somehow be able to. Are we recording? Can we stop recording?
Yes.
Go
Yes.
offline? Because I think we need to go offline in terms of like just reshaping the cultural consciousness. Like, how do we relate to living beings, even if they're not human? Like, how can we live together on Earth right now?
Yes.
In a different way? And that's the and this is coming to life right now. So amazing people are bringing to life right now the rights of nature. Certain lakes in the United States have a legal right to be there, and if they're polluted, there can be legal consequences, right? So I know some people who are working on this, the legal rights of nature, and we don't have it right now. But if we look at our town, if we continue developing, we're just by default going to be less resistant to, we're not